October 4th, 2017. A convoy of American and Nigerian soldiers pushes north along a lonely dirt road outside a small village called Tongo Tongo. They don't know it yet, but they're driving into a trap designed to kill them all. Suddenly, the silence breaks. Gunfire cracks through the morning haze. The rattle of machine guns echoes across the flat plains. RPG trails cut streaks of smoke through the air. Bullets slam into sand and dirt, snapping branches and punching holes through armored windshields. The Green Berets scramble for cover. Some dive into the ditch beside the road. Others grab their rifles, returning fire into the bush. Dust clouds rise from incoming rounds as they tear into the earth. They are outnumbered, outgunned, and exposed. ISIS fighters have been waiting, hidden among the trees and scrub. Within seconds, the ambush unleashes chaos. Radio calls erupt, shouted coordinates, desperate requests for support, voices breaking through static. But there are no helicopters overhead, no drones circling above. The team is alone. The Americans fight to establish a defensive line while their Nigerian partners scatter for cover. The crack of Kalashnikov rifles echoes in every direction. It feels like the enemy is everywhere at once. In the dust and confusion, one soldier spots something, movement along the flank. Shadows darting through the trees. The enemy is closing in, maneuvering to encircle them. What began as a simple reconnaissance patrol is now a fight for survival. The odds are stacked against them. Every decision, every second will determine who lives and who dies. To understand how these men found themselves in one of the deadliest firefights of America's war on terror in Africa, we must go back to the beginning. Most Americans had never heard of Tongo Tongo. Many didn't even know that U.S. soldiers were fighting in Niger. But in 2017, the West African nation was a key battlefield in the global fight against ISIS. After the collapse of ISIS strongholds in Iraq and Syria, the terror group spread its influence to Africa. Militants exploited weak governments, porous borders, and ungoverned spaces. One of the deadliest offshoots was ISIS Greater Sahara, a group that thrived in the vast deserts where state authority was thin. The United States had been quietly training and advising African partners in counterterrorism. Small Special Forces teams, Green Berets, were tasked with building local capacity, sharing intelligence, and conducting reconnaissance missions. Unlike in Iraq or Afghanistan, they weren't leading combat offensives. They were supposed to be in the shadows. But war has a way of blurring the lines. On the morning of October 4th, Operational Detachment Alpha 3212, an 11-man Green Beret team, departed from a base in Wallam, Niger, alongside 30 Nigerian soldiers. Their mission was reconnaissance, track down a local ISIS commander believed to be operating in the region. The target was elusive. Intelligence was murky. The team moved cautiously through villages, asking questions, gathering information, monitoring suspicious movements. It was supposed to be low risk. The team had been on patrol for hours when they reached the village of Tongo Tongo. There, they paused to resupply, refill their canteens, and speak with local elders. What they didn't know was that some villagers had already informed ISIS fighters of their presence. The Green Berets would soon be leaving the village on the same road they entered, straight into an ambush. Just after 11:30 a.m., the patrol began its return. The terrain was open and flat, with scattered trees and thorny scrub. It offered little cover. Perfect ground for an ambush. Unknown to the Americans, over 100 ISIS fighters had gathered in the bush. They carried AK-47s, PKM machine guns, RPGs, and technical trucks with mounted heavy weapons. Their plan was simple: wait until the convoy was strung out, then strike from multiple directions. The first shots came from the flank. Bursts of automatic fire. Then rockets slammed into the dirt beside the lead vehicle. Within seconds, the entire convoy was under heavy fire. The Green Berets reacted instantly, trained muscle memory kicking in. Some dismounted, laying suppressive fire toward muzzle flashes in the tree-line. Others maneuvered their Nigerian partners into defensive positions. But the enemy had the advantage. They were elevated, concealed, and attacking from three sides. The Americans were pinned against the road, exposed in the open. Radio operators tried to call for close air support, but in the remote Sahel, help was hours away. No drones were overhead. The nearest French Mirage jets were hundreds of miles to the south. As ISIS fighters pushed forward, their fire grew heavier. The convoy began to break apart. Some vehicles stalled under fire. Soldiers scrambled for cover behind thin shrubs, ditches, or their own trucks. The enemy moved with precision, trying to flank and encircle. The Green Berets were now fighting for their lives. In the chaos, Staff Sergeant Bryan Black, Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson, and Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright held their ground, laying down accurate fire to slow the enemy's advance. They exposed themselves repeatedly to protect their teammates. Sergeant Law David Johnson fought alongside his comrades until the battle forced them apart. Cut off in the confusion, he continued to fire alone, engaging wave after wave of attackers. The Green Berets tried to maneuver south, using smoke grenades to cover their movement. But the enemy kept closing in, forcing them into brutal, close-range firefights. One soldier fired his M240 machine gun until the barrel overheated. Another sprinted through open ground under fire to recover a fallen comrade. Decisions were made in seconds: stay and shoot, or move and risk exposure. The Nigerian soldiers, though shaken, stood their ground beside the Americans. Some fought with AKs, others with mounted heavy machine guns. For many, it was their first major firefight. The battle raged for nearly 2 hours. Every minute stretched into an eternity. Ammunition began to run low. Soldiers scavenged magazines from the wounded. Water was gone. Sweat mixed with dust and blood. At one point, ISIS fighters surged dangerously close, threatening to overrun the position. The Green Berets coordinated a desperate counterattack, pushing them back just long enough to reorganize. Finally, French aircraft arrived overhead. Their roar broke the stalemate. Though they couldn't drop bombs too close to friendly forces, the sight of jets screaming low forced the militants to scatter. But for the Americans, the cost was devastating. For Green Berets lay dead. Others were wounded. Nigerian partners were killed as well. Still, the survivors had managed the impossible. They had fought off a force nearly 10 times their size with no artillery, no air support, and only their rifles, training, and each other. The ambush at Tongo Tongo shocked America. Few had known that U.S. soldiers were even operating in Niger. Now for were dead: Bryan Black, Jeremiah Johnson, Dustin Wright, and Law David Johnson. Their names would forever be linked to a remote African village most Americans had never heard of. The firefight triggered debates in Washington about mission planning, intelligence failures, and rules of engagement. Some asked why the team had been sent with so little support. Others argued that such risks were inevitable in shadow wars fought far from home. For the men who survived, the memory of that day never faded. They remembered the sound of incoming fire, the weight of responsibility, the faces of the brothers they lost. But they also remembered courage, men who stood their ground when the odds were impossible. Men who fought not for glory, but for the lives beside them. The ambush at Tongo Tongo was not just a battle. It was a reminder of sacrifice, of resilience, and of the unforgiving nature of war. On that lonely road in Niger, Green Berets faced death, and in doing so, etched their story into history.